Hey, welcome back to Fish Hunt Northwest. We're here in the Bait Lab. Bait Lab is now presented by Max Lure. Happy to have them on board. I mean, they're doing a fantastic job, and we are very happy to be teamed up with them. So I have here basically a nice wild coho salmon that was caught here a couple days ago. Basically snatched this thing out of the river on a jingling jig. So for what that's worth, just want to kind of run through a real simple way for me to fillet out this fish. I like trying to get as many bones out of the fish as I can when I either grill it, put it on the Traeger, cut it up into smaller chunks for smoking, whatever it is. You know, one thing about the presentation on your fish, no matter how you cook it or present it, is how it palates and not having to pick bones out of your mouth or your teeth. Especially if you're trying to convert people into enjoying fish, boneless is definitely something that will steer them in the right direction. So first thing I do, this is a fish that's been gutted at the river. If you look at this fish, it's extremely healthy. I mean, the thick belly walls on this thing are just lined with fat, okay? So when you're filleting out your salmon, you know, you want to do your due diligence and not remove all the fat out of the bottom end of this meat, whether you're grilling or smoking or whatever it is. This is a very healthy fish, early in river, just out of the salt, with a lot of its fat, nutrient, and oil still in the meat. It's very red. It's a nice buck. As we fillet this out, we don't want to get rid of all that, so you got to kind of be careful with how you remove those rib bones and get that stuff out of there. One thing that you can do to make it easier for you is you start by just simply getting rid of these external fins, because they just kind of get in your way as you're dragging that fillet knife through there. I'll take these lower fins out of here and hope I don't cut my finger. If I cut off a finger at any point, we may change our program here. So we're just getting these fins out of the way. Makes it a lot easier to fillet this thing out, okay? And I'll just remove whichever ones I feel like need to go, because again, they're just in the way. Now, this one has been opened up at the belly cavity. For some, it's really easy just to come behind the collar here, 45 on the knife, and go down the backbone. And if you remove that and you flip the fish over, now you're going to fillet it against a backbone that's laying flat down on a board, and it's not in a neutral position. So a lot of times you end up hacking up that other side of the fillet. It doesn't work well for you. If you struggle with that, one thing you can do is simply take the knife, go in through the belly here on the top side of the backbone. For me, I like to start with the blade going towards the tail, okay? So now I'm just gonna run this, and definitely have a sharp knife, all right? Gonna run this down. I'm not gonna cut it all the way through. I use that as a pickup point. I'll show you that in a second. Now I turn the knife around, get it in there on the backbone where it was before, and now we're just gonna run this up towards the head, all the way up, okay? Now, because I haven't removed this, I can simply flip that fish over, all right? So now the reason you do that is that slab underneath there helps keep that backbone in a neutral plane. I'm not having to worry about carving down or against it. It doesn't naturally take my knife down into the backbone, which becomes problematic. So now I'm going to take this same exact way on the top side of the backbone, and we're going to go towards the tail, okay? It's held that spine in a neutral position, so I'm not wasting a lot of meat. Come back up, figure out where that line is, and I got it right there. Okay, so basically these are cut off both sides. Now I can go ahead and just finish this side here. I don't want the collar on, so I'm going to poke this on through right there and cut back up towards the head at about a 45. Cut that through, okay? And I just roll that right off there. Really nice clean fillet from top to bottom. Turns out real nice. Turn this one over. Poke this through at the fin, at the collar. Bring that up towards the head. Okay. Again, I'll finish the tail here. Okay. 2 fillets. Now, you can see not a lot left on this fish at all. If you want to save those collars, you can. On these coho of about 12 pounds, there's not a ton of meat left on those. I haven't wasted a whole lot of meat. So drop those off. So now I have 2 really nice fillets here, okay? I have a little bit of cleanup to do. I look at the top here. I'm going to go ahead and leave like this right up here, this top fat. I'm going to leave that in there because for cooking, that just makes sense. This one here is pretty clean. Now I'm looking at my rib bones, okay? So I used this knife as my knife to cut down the backbone and through the rib bone. So it's, you know, it's got a sharp edge, but to get these rib bones off of this flesh, I'm going to get another blade that has a little more flexibility to it and is extremely sharp. Now, one thing I can tell you as we look down on this is if I run this along here, and I think I'm going to take all that out at the same time, what you end up doing, I had mentioned this belly fat before, and you can see all this belly fat down at the bottom here. You don't want to remove all that with the skin. Those rib bones stop right about there. There's no reason for me to cut all this out of here. I want those fats and oils to be in there when we're cooking this fish. So the way I do this is it's important. You want to grab this top edge of these bones, okay? Really sharp knife, and I'm just going to make kind of a starter cut all the way down along right here, okay? I'm also going to come back to the top and make sure I get this, I'm capturing this front edge of every one of those bones to make sure I don't end up cutting through them. Now, with a little pressure on the meat and exaggerating, rotating this blade upwards almost at a 45, okay, I draw the knife down the bones at a section at a time. So I'm going to work my way through the bones versus trying to scoop it out. It's when I scoop it out that I end up cutting through this belly wall, and I don't want to get rid of all that. So get back up here to capture this bone right here. Again, now I'm just basically drawing it along here, okay, and I hold it flat. And by doing that, again, a really sharp knife, and now I come up and I remove all that, and it's left a lot of meat on that belly, okay? Now I got the opposite side to do. Take this one here, and same thing, but it's kind of opposite, but you just want to go along those rib bones. And again, we don't want to take too much at a time. And if I angle the knife slightly up, you can feel it run along those bones, leaving as much of that meat and fat on there as we can, okay? And it's just work your way through nice and easy. You don't have to be in a hurry on this or you just waste too much meat, all right? I see guys that go after it and they take big strides at once and they end up cutting a lot of that belly meat out of there. So that right there is leaving a majority of that, and it actually comes back up towards all that. All that fat is left on that belly, which when it comes to smoking and grilling, that is ideal. So now, here's where we get the pin bones out, okay? So now I have this, we'll do this side, okay? And we're just gonna do one here to get through this process. Pin bones run on this high ridge. You can barely make them out. Maybe if I put them center here, you can see the top edges of these. And they go about almost, it goes beyond half. It's about 2/3 of your fillet on this top ridge has these pin bones. Now, those go in and they're angled back towards the high back of the fish. So I take another small blade and I want to cut the small side, what ends up being my small side of my cut first. And I'm simply going to find that pin bone line, and I'm going to, with the knife pointing down towards the top of the back, okay, I'm going to run that knife right along those pin bones. And you can feel them right along that blade. And I'm not pushing down really hard on the knife. I'm just letting the very sharp knife and the weight of the knife just kind of drag along the pin bones. And you want to feel it. It just kind of goes tick, 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 tick along the bones. And it's important that I leverage the knife towards the top of the fish. That allows it to stay on that pin bone line and draw. So let me turn this around and do it this way. So I'm looking at that, I'm on the high side, and I am simply cutting down that pin bone line, okay? And I can see most of them, but the majority of them I'm just feeling as it goes along the way here, okay? So as that cuts down, and I just take several swipes at it, it doesn't have to all be at once, all right? And we want to get clear to the back here. I can feel them all the way back here on the ridge. Okay, we're moving along. Cut those down, and once you get past the bones, you can literally push that on through the skin, and you've now cut that slab out. So that top piece right there is pretty much bone free. You might miss a couple back in here, but those bones are right here in this ridge. So now on the inside of this cut, I look at where these bones are, and I'm just going to draw this down along the pin bones. Now you might think, well, we're wasting too much meat, but I assure you, when this is done, because it's just the knife dragging along the bones with a little bit of flesh intact, yeah, you can wait and you can pull each one of these out by a plier, and when they break off, as most of them do, you get kind of pissed off, and you know, half of them are buried in there. I can run this down now through the skin, okay, and all the way through. And now I get down to the bottom in here, simple angle cut, back on the skin, maybe carve that out of there, and there you go. So now when I go to cook this up, all right, if I'm going to grill this, I simply just push this back together, basically like that, which helps keep the moisture in there. If I was to cook this and leave that hanging out like that, it's probably going to dry this piece out a little too fast, but I can assure you, after grilling several fish this way, just with that pushed up against there nice and tight, seasoned up, oiled and whatnot, that thing cooks up every bit as good as if, you know, this little strip of flesh is in there. And if you look at that, and that's even a little thicker than I normally do, but that did not waste a whole lot of meat. I mean, that is, for me, that is worth getting those pin bones out of there. And I have a nice fillet. Now, if I go to cut this up, I want to make it into separate sections. Here at the tail section, you know, that's a no-brainer because it's already cut all the way through. And then I have this here. I can go ahead and pack this up and freeze this side by side. I basically have 3 very nice chunks of fillet there that are pretty much about 95% bone free. So I don't know about you, this is an option. You can certainly cook up this whole slab for guests and company and just, you know, let them get those pin bones out of there, or you can take some time and cut those pin bones out, give that a try. Again, it doesn't take a lot of pressure, sharp knife, run along those rib bones, take that sliver of meat out of there, and it's pretty doggone simple. So hopefully that gives you a little tip on something else to try when you're filleting your fish. It's an option. There's a lot of ways to fillet fish. I get it. This is something I started doing and enjoyed. Okay, with that, we're going to jump out for a quick break. We come back, we're going to be in the kitchen with Chef Kelly and Sherry. Oddly enough, garlic salmon recipe, boneless, guaranteed. Don't go anywhere. We'll be right back after this break.